Right guys, thanks for joining me at the bench. This is take 3 or 4. I've knocked the camera over twice and only just saved the ship from being crushed to pieces. So we're going to go on, like say, take 4 or 5 now. Anyway, this is the Agamemnon. She was commissioned in 1781 and wrecked in 1809. She was a 64 gun ship of the line. So she was third rate, and meaning that she was in the same standard as the 74 gun ships. The 64 guns were quite popular, pre-Revolutionary War days, but as the wars moved on, it was found that 74 gun ships were the standard, if you want to put it that way. Yes, you've got larger ships, 80 guns and 100 guns, but they tended to be more like command ships. The standard fighting ship of the line was a 74 gun and 64s, and the 64s lasted throughout the Napoleonic Wars, and obviously before that some of them were what we call razzied down, which is literally take a deck off and made into either large frigates or used for convoy work, as far as Australia, because obviously we were just developing Australia as a colony then, and obviously operated in the Indian Ocean, protecting the East India convoys going to China and India. So they had an active career, and they were used throughout the world. They were quite handy ships to have, especially say when you got to when we had the War of 1812 against the Americans. Quite often they had quite superior frigates. They were, to be honest, built better. They had larger crews, and they had a fair amount of firepower. And we found that our smaller frigates were obviously being overpowered all the time. So they started in that side of the war. They started putting larger ships in, try and combat that. So this is a Langton 1 in 1200 scale ship. Here we go again, as I nearly knocked the camera over again. It's a lovely little ship to build and paint. This is one of their named ships, so it supposedly looks like Agamemnon. Although, to be straight, every ship that I've made from them, I couldn't see how you couldn't call it one ship or another. To be honest, this doesn't look particularly any different than other ships I've constructed off them. But this was, if you remember, couple of years back, I bought, when I first got my first Langtons, I bought one of the starter boxes somebody put on eBay, and this is literally the last ship after all these couple of 3 years that was in the box, and I've done a lot of others since then. I've painted her in beige, so this is quite a light colour. I was going to paint her darker, but I just fancied, let's have a bit of a change. The light blue that you see, quite bright, that is quite an expensive paint to have, so the captains tended to just put them literally at the blunt end and the pointy end, just to make the ship look a bit more special. I will be highlighting, normally I highlight the black on the ships, but I've found when I'm rigging and that, by the time I put me lots of strands of rigging on and me glue on, it's easier to patch up anything and then highlight those last little bits. The white that you see on there, they're stowed hammocks. They always put them on the side of the ship and stow them that way. And they also do provide, apart from keeping the space below decks and keeping the hammocks clean, they also provide some protection against musket balls when they're actually in combat. This ship's easy sail, as they call it, which means the lower courses have been raised. That isn't so much for combat, it's more just to save wear and tear on the sails, which are expensive, and obviously you couldn't carry too much, although they would have spare sail. Obviously they were restricted, so if they weren't having to go anywhere in a rush, quite often they'd have the sails drawn up like that. I've actually stepped these masts back, you might just see. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. From what I've read, again, it would be up to the captain, with maybe the advice of the sailing master, to how far they wanted to incline them. I believe it makes the ship go quicker. The only problem being, obviously, if you incline them too far, it puts more strain on them in high winds. but I just thought, no, we'll step these back slightly. Because this was already, it wasn't actually built, but somebody put the stern cabin already on. If you see a slight angle, that's how they're supposed to look. So I don't worry about that. But I do normally sink the masts in slightly more. But I just went with what was the bowsprit was already stuck on quite solidly. I normally drill out the mast holes. The holes are already pre-drilled, but I like to take them a bit deeper, and also take the bowsprit further in, just to give it that bit of more protection. Let's see if we can go in a bit closer. I've painted the bulwarks red. You'll see that a lot of people do it. It wasn't as people have often said, oh, it was to stop the look of the blood on the side of the ships, and I think that's a bit of old bilge, to be honest with you. From what I've read, they could just as well be painted either varnished natural wood, or again the main ship colour, just depending what the captain wanted. But yeah, we've got red. I've done red for a change on these. I don't always do it. Again, you've got your gratings down, these yellow. So I'm trying to get my little pointy stick in. This isn't as easy as I thought it would be. Having one of those days today. Yeah, the gratings, obviously, they're fairly easy to do. Paint them black and then just dry brush them in the wood colour. These skid bars on here, or beams, they would be for mounting the ship's boats. Sometimes Langtons will have the ship's boats moulded on already. You can buy packs of loose boats, which I've done before, and I've still got a fair few yet. But sometimes I just like to have them left open like that. Just makes the ship look a bit different. We'll just say either her boats are being towed behind her or whatever. The ship would actually be all open underneath here. You'd be literally walking under those beams, so I put a bit of black in there to show the shadows, because obviously there's guns under that deck in there. Now they would quite often be white as well. I've left these natural wood again for a change. Again, there's more stowed hammocks around the sides. So you've got the quarter decks and that leading on to the. I've shown these open, where quite often they'd actually be shuttered up. And they literally break them down in a couple of minutes. They practice it, and they could literally knock all the ship's cabins that the officers were in. They would actually just knock those down in a couple of minutes, and literally you'd be able to look down from one end of the ship to the other to fire the guns. The sails, I prefer this more grubby off-white look. Well, I don't know, there's a lot of white there, but I prefer this grubby. Sometimes you'll see me do them lighter, sometimes darker. It's not really showing up on the video, but I've tried to put some highlights and shadows in, just to try and make as if there's some movement in the canvas, if that makes sense. These are ropes, and these little bits here are ropes as well, so they could furl up the courses to whatever they wanted to how much sail they wanted to drop down. The masts themselves on this one are painted. Again, you can do this. You won't find many pictures, and you won't really find many descriptions of a completed painted ship. So just go with what have a look at modern artists' drawings, because they would have obviously looked at more pictures than you've probably looked at. But sometimes you'll get me painting the entire mast the same colour. This time I've got natural wood up here instead, and just the base ones are actually yellow or beige. So guys, thanks for a not so quick video yet again on Agamemnon. I will either show another video, not a long description you'll heave a sigh of relief for, but I'll be showing one when the rat lines are attached, and when I normally put the rat lines and the standing rigging, which is the black rigging you'll see on the ship. That's the black. When you see black rigging, that's something that's holding the masts. It's not actually working the sails. So I'll show it probably with the black rigging on, and then maybe have another one where I'm showing the the working or running rigging, and the base obviously all painted up. So thank you very much guys for your indulgence in this overly long video of a very small ship. I hope everything's going well with you guys, and I will catch you again on another video. Cheers.